Hello everyone, Guillaume Dotzauer here, host of the E-Commerce Wizards podcast, where I feature leaders in e-commerce and business. This episode today is for those of you who run or wants to run a B2B business-to-business e-commerce website or a B2B marketplace. So Erik today will take us on the journey from the startup to the current state of this company through an 8-year time frame of being a very successful and very important player now in the industry. So as a B2B marketplace for medical supplies, and now they're running on the Adobe Commerce e-commerce platform, formerly known as Magento Enterprise. So this is for those with a significant size, usually of a platform and commercial success. So this is a very interesting episode to hear how they started, what kind of hurdles, what they've done to get this off the ground, and then what kind of hurdles they overcame as they grew the company now to where it's at. So if you're running B2B or marketplace e-commerce store, check this out. Today's guest is Erik Dotzauer. He's the e-commerce manager at DocShop Pro. This is a marketplace that's running on Adobe Commerce. It's a platform formerly known as Magento Enterprise, a very powerful, very scalable platform. And today we're going to talk about figuring how to grow using less. All right, Erik, thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, pleasure. So you're an e-commerce manager. This is a well-established business running Adobe Commerce, an enterprise solution. Can you give us a high-level view, like figuring how to grow using less? Like, where were you guys? Where are you at now? And maybe then you can walk us through that story of the growth.
Yeah, of course, I'd be happy to. So the story for DocShop Pro, it starts just about 7 or 8 years ago. And the business grew from an idea from a doctor that really couldn't find the service that they were looking for. And so basically he was trying to solve a problem that he had from himself. And that really kind of centered around the idea that there wasn't this idea of a one-stop shop where he could get all of the supplies that he needed to run his business. A lot of people think of, your kind of Amazon of sorts in that space. And so he set out on a mission to solve it. And so when we kind of talk about the idea of growing with less, it really was an incremental process for us from where we started at that point in time, really to where we are today. So happy to tell you a little bit more about kind of that process and where we started. So I've been with the company for almost 3 years now, but I also did work with them since the launch of the business when I was working on the agency side of things. And when we started out, it really didn't have that feeling of a marketplace. We had built the site on Magento 1, and it was more of a drop ship model of a business. So we really kind of started out small with a couple of key vendors, and that opportunity allowed us to work out some of the kinks to start growing our business, but also setting our eyes on bigger targets and kind of what the business would evolve into. And as we grew from that kind of startup concept, when we did a replatform to Magento 2 last year, it really allowed us to unlock some of those tools and to kind of grow the business into what we expected it to be. I'm happy to kind of dive into more of those details, depending on what you'd like to discuss.
Well, there's a few key parts that are more interesting. They're really, really early days of the startup because people want to have an idea and they want to launch that business. People like hearing often how did the business go about that very early phase, because that's where a lot of stuff blocks and doesn't happen. So that's one part, but we can start together and later some kind of review about the growth, because you start, it's a new startup, it's completely new business. And now you're running, an Adobe Magento Enterprise Edition, which is expensive and reserved for companies that sort of made it reasonably big, at least mid-sized company in their field and so on. So let's talk about that company growth in those 8 years, how we got there.
Yeah, of course. So I think when we started to really kind of lay the plans for Magento 2, there were a couple of key problems that we had identified that we needed to solve. So going back to the earlier version on Magento 1, I think one of the biggest things that was an obstacle for growing our business was how we had our catalog structured. And so as you think of the idea of a marketplace and having all of these vendors bringing a variety of products to the market, and to be able to manage and organize all of that data so that you have a consistent user experience can be quite a challenge. And we on Magento 1 kind of created some problems that we needed to solve. And so one of the key things that really became problematic was within the catalog, every time we would bring on a new vendor, we would essentially take a copy of their catalog and we would bring it live on the site. And what we ended up doing was creating quite a headache for a lot of our customers. And what we found is that we had a lot of our vendors were selling the similar products, but we had a unique SKU for each vendor. And so you might be searching, for a specific product and you might get 6 results that are all the same. And it was really difficult for the customer to be able to kind of sort through those results to identify, is this the same product I'm looking at? Where is it being shipped from? How does the pricing compare? And it was just really a nightmare for us to manage internally, not including how that impacted our customers. And so one of the key improvements that we made as we made the shift from Magento 1 over to Magento 2 was we needed to really take our catalog. The analogy I always use is we basically took it in a blender, we broke it down into the most basic pieces, and then we reorganized the entire catalog. And in the process of doing that, we consolidated all of our SKUs. So instead of having unique SKUs for each of our vendors, we went from a single SKU, single vendor to a single SKU multi-vendor approach. And so
And that's a big deal. Like if somebody has not gone through that exercise, might not sound like much of a big deal. Like, well, you had duplicates products from because multiple vendors were selling the same product, but they had a different unique identifying number called SKU. So it's like, well, okay, whatever. Now you combine all this into a single SKU, and then you have multiple vendors selling that same SKU, like you may have on Amazon. Sounds obvious enough, simple enough, but when you do it at scale for an entire database with thousands upon thousands and thousands of products and lots of suppliers there, to do that cleanup job can be an epic task.
absolutely. I give a lot of respect to our staff because that was not a pleasant experience going through that. And obviously, it's not just as simple as chopping up a catalog and putting it back together again. We had completely new attribute sets and really the way everything was structured so that the layered navigation and all the components of the site would do what we wanted it to. It was really quite an endeavor. And I think that was probably the biggest challenge with the site was that kind of key new architecture that we brought online.
Yeah, and this is frequent even when you go from any kind of ERP, even someone who's not in a marketplace situation, you go with your offline catalog and then you bring it online, even though you don't have necessarily duplicate SKU in this case, but you might, if you're a retailer, reseller, you may have 2 or 3 sourcing suppliers for this, and you still need to structure your catalog so that you can process the online orders with this. So it's something that I've seen other merchants go through, even like classic big merchants offline doing tens of millions of dollars or more. And then when they go online, say, okay, well, now we need a new structure because how we do it in our ERP, it doesn't work like that online. And we need to restructure the whole catalog for a better online experience. And it can be a big task.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the keys for us in our success, obviously, Adobe Commerce has been critical, not just for bringing everything together and allowing us to do what we need to do, but also having that room for growth as we continue to invest in and grow in the business. One of the other key pieces of software that we utilize is the Unity U Marketplace software. And so that really is kind of that magic where you lay this on top of the Magento installation, and that brings to life all of the marketplace functionality that we need. So as we process orders, it basically splits those orders out, automates everything, sends all the orders out to our vendors for fulfillment, and it allows us really to kind of keep all of those unique touch points for our vendors in place. So it allows us to assign a unique SKU, which is going to align with their ERP system or e-commerce system, whatever it is that they're processing out of. It allows us to, set their unique pricing and all of those types of things. And so I think that that's really one of the key things for the success of our business is finding that right mix of software that really allows you to excel in what it is that you do without needing to go to a developer and customize everything. And so I think for us, if we didn't have that piece of software, there are certainly others out there in the marketplace, but that one was the right fit for us. And I certainly expect, that it'll continue to allow us to grow the business as we kind of unlock more pieces of that software as we grow and we have the capacity to, bite off a little bit more.
All right. And if we go back to zoom in the early days, let's say from idea to a business there on Magento 1 at first, did you start as a purely online store, or did you build also an offline sales force to try to promote the business? Like, how did that look?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So we always identified as an online store, but in our industry, it was kind of hard to get through to some of our best prospects without actually having a sales force on the ground. And so we kind of did a hybrid model, which is similar to what a lot of our competitors do, where you have the online store, but you also have a sales team that is, maintaining those relationships, helping customers to find, that right product mix for their business. And over time, that's evolved a little bit. I think not just for us, but in the industry, I think we're seeing less dependency on that external sales force as I think more people become accustomed to the online shopping experience. And when you can provide a greater experience for support and really being able to answer those questions, you don't really need to knock on quite as many doors as you used to.
Yeah, because you're in a B2B setting, so you want those companies who need medical supply to consider your marketplace as a source, a credible source for medical supplies. So you might still need to go knock on a few doors so they know that you exist, but you leverage the online platform. So you're way more efficient than in the old days when there was no online transaction.
Yeah, and I think one of the keys for success for us was back on the Magento 1 instance. One of the challenges that we have is that almost all our vendors have a minimum advertised price. And so at first, our kind of reflex to handle that was to gate the site. So essentially, if you didn't have a login, you couldn't view the catalog. And as you imagine, that really dings SEO and
Yes,
the ability
big time. Your
to
search
get that
engine
organic
optimization is
traffic.
just dead. Yeah.
And just the simple act of basically, allowing anybody to browse the site, and more importantly,
Yeah.
allowing bots to index the site. That
Right.
led to a 90% increase in organic traffic in about 6 months once we removed that barrier. And so I think that was a big step for us as we continue really to focus on letting people find us and not so much us going out and having to find them.
Right, and they just need to log in to see the price or personalized price based on their, merchant level, your silver, bronze, or something like that, I imagine.
Yeah. So, well, a couple of things. One is that because we do sell restricted products, pharmaceuticals, things like that, to be able to purchase on the site, we do need to have a copy of a medical license. So that is one of the requirements that we have to basically get a login so that you can view the catalog. And then, yeah, that brings in pricing as well.
Okay, cool. So, okay, that's one good move you made. You went from an overly gated site that doesn't even show the catalog to, okay, now we can browse the catalog. So traffic goes up big time, obviously, but at the same time, it's nice that you share this with others. Don't do that mistake. You can save yourself a mistake by listening to this episode here. What else did you guys do to increase traffic on the site here?
So one of the value adds that we have on our site, we call it my supply manager. It had a little bit of a different kind of flavor to it on Magento 1, whereas when we went over to Magento 2, basically we took the native Magento requisition list and customized that in a way that allows our customers to track inventory. And so that was another, one of the obstacles that was identified when this business was started, going way back is not just the ability to order, but the ability to keep everything organized. And so what we found is a lot of our customers were smaller doctor practices where you might have maybe 1 to 6 doctors sharing a roof. And, more often than not, it would be the doctor themselves on a lunch break or an assistant going into the supply closet, pen, piece of paper, and just trying to figure out like what do we need for the next month to keep things going. And so we built in some tools into the site just to streamline that a little bit so that they can, if they chose to take their phone into that supply closet, run a quick inventory, you can set a par level, and then you would know, exactly what it is that you wanted to place an order for. So that was one of the other things that we didn't see a whole lot of our competitors have in the space. And so we thought that would, help a certain kind of customer, just that little bit extra on the site to kind of help them out. And that's definitely one of the features that does get quite a bit of use.
This episode is brought to you by MageMontreal. If a business wants a powerful e-commerce online store that will increase their sales, or to move piled up inventory to free up cash reserves, or to automate business processes to reduce human processing errors, our company MageMontreal can do that. We've been helping e-commerce stores for over a decade. Here's the catch. We're specialized and only work on the Adobe Magento e-commerce platform, also known as Adobe Commerce. We're among only a handful of certified companies in Canada. We do everything Magento related. If you know someone who needs design, support, training, maintenance, or a new e-commerce website, email our team at support@magemontreal.com or go to magemontreal.com. That's MAGE Montreal.com.
Okay, pretty good. And in the spirit of, like you said, doing more with less, so we've heard some of the techniques you've used, but can you give us a little bit more of a view about this constraint here? Like a startup, everybody who's been through a startup phase knows that you have limited resources. There's always 10 times more to do than you have staff for, and so on. But can you give us some ideas here of doing more with less?
Yeah, I think the first thing is probably everybody in the company wears 5 hats. So you might have your daily set of responsibilities, but we really do cross-train in a lot of key competencies, which allows our staff to really kind of move around and handle different tasks. There are a number of things that are kind of sticky points within the business that we're working through. I think shipping is one of those key things that can be really challenging for a business of our size to manage, especially as a marketplace that doesn't have central warehousing. And so I think when we look at our competitors, one of the things that we see a lot of for people that aren't warehousing products or using a third party like 3PL to do that kind of a thing is minimum pricing or minimum order values for different vendors or for the site. And for us, one of the things that we really didn't want to impact was the customer experience. We want people to be able to come to the site, find what it is that they're looking for, and not have to have a calculator right next to them trying to figure out, did I spend enough with this vendor to unlock free shipping or to get reasonable shipping? And so for us, I think we have basically, kind of shifted our paradigm a little bit on how we approach some of the bigger problems. And so for us, doing more with less is a lot of the stuff kind of gets handled internally. So when we have problems with RMAs, different types of issues, that is our team really kind of jumping up and handling, a lot of these problems in-house. And so I think, for us, that's, a core strength is our customer service team and really being able to troubleshoot some of these problems that we run into, where there's maybe like technical limitations on some of these things where we just don't want to really have a negative impact on our shopping experience. And so for us, being able to handle some of those problems in-house, I think makes a world of difference.
Yeah, I like your mention of cross-functional training, because when it is possible in a business, you cannot, in some cases, train the guy to be a surgeon and to be all kind of other trades, because it's all specialized trades. But when it is possible in the business to have cross-functional training that one person can do at a professional level, more than one seat, gives you a lot of flexibility to handle the day-to-day. I've seen it in other companies and in our own, that it is a very useful thing. So, and I do believe that this will leverage a lot the spirit of doing more with less, because you'll have less staff who are more flexible, more versatile, more well-rounded, and you'll be able to do more with less than if you have people who can only do one trade each. So I think this is a great share here.
Yeah, and to kind of build on that, I think when we talk about data and integrations, I think that's another area where we really try to keep it lean on the budget, but we're also starting to see more growth in that area. So one of the key challenges, right, is the marketplace. You need to be able to not just pass the data for orders onto our vendors so that they can fill and ship those orders, but also receiving data to make sure that your inventory and your prices, all of those things are aligned with, what a customer would experience in real time. I know that, for a lot of enterprise businesses, everything's automated, right? So there's kind of like this like minimum level to get in, where you have to have, either an API connection or some degree of connectivity, that's dictated by the marketplace. And for us, what we found is that many of our suppliers are smaller. They maybe don't have the technical chops. And so for us, we really are kind of flexible on how we approach that. As we kind of look to the future, we are certainly working more on integrations and automating that data transfer back and forth. But for us, some of it we do manually, and it's not always ideal, but it allows our vendors to kind of keep it in the warehouse where they're not, asked to bring technical resources to the table that they maybe don't have. And for us, we have a kind of an array of ways that we can integrate with our partners. So sometimes for inventory, it's a very manual process. If we have something that's a hot seller, we might get an email saying, hey, this just sold out, and our team needs to be able to react and pull that product down off the site. For some of our vendors, we just use kind of a basic FTP, where we'll download a file every day, and then we'll upload that into our system to get updates on inventory and pricing. And for some of our vendors, we have an EDI connection. We'll have an XML file that's going back and forth, and that'll bring back, all of our shipping tracking numbers and things like that. And so we're obviously going more into the automation space and really trying, to get as much of the data pushed along as efficiently as possible, but also understanding, with our business and kind of where we are in the market, that if we do that too aggressively, we're going to push out a lot of our vendors that we rely on and have great relationships with.
Right. So you took some of the burden on yourself to remove blockers for some of the suppliers to come on your platform. Say, okay, we'll help you with transferring all that data online. I do believe one day AI will be able to do this, but that's probably like 10 years or so from now. Don't know exactly how many years, but one day we'll get there where all that grunt work will be handled by a smarter robot for the most part. So I look forward to that day. But in the meantime, you're correct that a lot of the small businesses, when you look at statistics, have not completed their digital transformation and don't have anything more fancy than like an Excel spreadsheet that might be incomplete or limited in many ways to manage inventory. So if you want a lot of those small merchants, you have to think about how I'm going to solve that business problem to help them get on the platform. So yeah, good thing that you're helping them there. Any other either business problem that you guys have sort of solved that allowed you to grow as a company, or some other techniques that you've used to drive traffic to the site?
We have a couple of things in the works. So we are in the process of implementing a loyalty program. I think most people are pretty acclimated with what that is and what that means. But for us, we're looking for all the ways that we can bring stickiness to the business. So, one of those things is going to be our customer service. Second piece is really the breadth of our product line, and what we can deliver to our customers. Obviously, we have the tool to manage inventory within our site. And one of the things that we hope to bring online very soon this year would be a loyalty program. And essentially, we just want to continue to reward our customers and to create that loyalty. And so by allowing them to accrue, essentially points or a rebate to use for future orders, I think a lot of businesses have great success with doing that. And so that's certainly in the pipeline for us to roll out later this year.
Okay, cool. And to wrap this up, any other ideas you'd like to share?
Ah, that's a great question. It'll be interesting to see, I think, where Adobe goes with the B2B offerings within Magento, right? So that was obviously one of the big things with Magento 2. We're currently in the process of rolling that out for our first customers, where we're implementing purchasing controls and approvals and things like that. And while I'd say that the majority of our customers don't require that, it really is a blessing to be offering that for customers that do. And so I'll anxiously be kind of awaiting the roadmap as Adobe continues to invest into that program and brings more tools and ways for people in the B2B space to really meet those needs of our customers to share data and to be able to grow a business with native tools and not necessarily needing to go outside the ecosystem that Adobe has created to supplement that.
Yeah, it's a great tool for any business. It's quite a leap when you don't have that kind of digital tool to now having one, such as the B2B suite from Adobe Commerce. There's some other tools that does that too, but this one's great that, now you have all those access rights. For example, an engineer can add parts to a cart, but will not have the rights to check out because it's over $100,000, whatever. And then a supervisor comes in and they're autonomous as an entity to add and remove employees and manage access rights and permissions for checkout and so on, up to what threshold of money and so on. And you have all those procurement lists also for pre-made and separate carts for many separate projects. So it's very, it's a blessing for a business that needs that kind of sophistication for B2B processes.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Erik. Well, thanks for being here today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
If anybody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
You can reach me through our customer service at the website. So we have a contact us, and I think my email is on the website as well. So if anybody's looking to get in touch, that's the best way to do it. I'm on LinkedIn as well. I don't really do social media these days, so those are the two ways to get a hold of me.
All right. Thank you, Erik.
All right. Thank you.